Good morning or afternoon, everyone. My name is Mariela Salinas, and I'm a marketing specialist here at Educate 360. Welcome to today's webinar, Power BI Data Analytics for Beginners, presented by our excellent instructor for today, Ed McCrae. We are in Zoom for today's session, and we will be sharing a copy of this recording with you in an email after the webinar. We do encourage participation throughout the webinar, so please use the chat or the Q&A option for our short Q&A after the presentation. Educate 360 is so excited to present this webinar today, so without further ado, I will hand over to you, Ed.
All right, good afternoon to everyone and welcome to our webinar. Again, this is Power BI Data Analytics for Beginners, and I'm your instructor, Ed McCrae. During this session, we are going to take a quick overview, a look at what Power BI is and what it is that you would use Power BI to do. And we'll take a look at some of the basics of how we could start building some things inside of a Power BI environment. Now, when we think about Power BI is a business intelligence solution. That's what the BI in Power BI stands for. And business intelligence solutions are all about data analysis, right? Being able to visualize data in a way that is more palatable for our end users. And any business intelligence solution should allow us to do these four things. Firstly, a business intelligence solution should give us a variety of options of importing data from multiple sources, right? You could have data in Excel, in a database like SQL or Access, maybe information coming from online like a SharePoint list or something, right? We have data that's being stored natively in all kinds of places. I want to be able to leave that data where it lives, but import it or connect to it inside of my business intelligence solution. Secondly, a business intelligence solution should allow us to manipulate slash transform data. So oftentimes that data living in its natural place was not constructed for use in a data model. This is especially true if we are talking about Excel, all right? Where often we're making things based on what it is that we want to see, and we're not so much thinking about functionality, okay? So we're going to need some kind of tool for cleaning our data up and transforming it so that we can use it in a data model. Thirdly, a business intelligence solution should allow us to visualize data. So we should have a good variety of interactive visualizations, charts, tables, other different kinds of interactive elements that we can use to both display our data and allow people to be able to manipulate that data. And then lastly, we need to have the ability to be able to share this data out. We need to be able to make this data available to whoever needs access to it within our organization. All right. Now, Power BI is going to do all these things for us. Power BI is a business analytics service that delivers insights to enable fast, informed decisions. We can transform data into stunning visuals and share them with colleagues on any device. We can visually explore and analyze data, whether it be on premise, meaning in a local server somewhere, and in the cloud, so you can have all that information together in one spot. It lets us collaborate on and share customized dashboards and interactive reports. We will define the difference between a dashboard and a report in a moment. Most of the time, when people say they want to do dashboarding, they're really talking about reports. They just don't realize it. So we'll differentiate between those two things in just a moment. And lastly, we need to be able to scale or share our data out across the span of our organization, right? So that other people can be able to access it. There are three different Power BI platforms or areas where we would access our Power BI information. One of these three is the Power BI web service. This is how we can access Power BI through Office 365. All right. Secondly is Power BI Desktop. This is the downloadable and installable version of Power BI that's on our local computer if you installed it there. And then thirdly, we have the Power BI mobile service, which is how we can access Power BI through our phones and tablets. And this is where we would just view existing information. We would not manipulate information in any way using Power BI Mobile. We would just view existing data. If you are really going to take full advantage of all that Power BI has to offer in terms of creating data in Power BI, then you're going to need to use both Power BI Desktop and the web service. All right. And there are certain things that each of those do exclusively, and there is some overlap between the two. So let's talk about the different components of Power BI and which platform we would utilize for each of these components. Firstly, we have a data set or data model. Okay, this is the combination of data that we've imported from our variety of sources and related together. This is going to be created using Power BI Desktop. All right. Power BI Desktop is the preferred tool for this because it gives us more options for importing data and for cleaning that data up, right? The web service gives us some options, but not as many as Power BI Desktop, right? So the creation of your data set or data model is going to be done in Power BI Desktop. I'll demonstrate this for you in just a moment. Then we have reports, which are a page-based space where the dimensions are similar to PowerPoint. And this is where we would create our visualizations, right? So creating our charts, creating our interactivity, our filtering, all those different kinds of things that we want our end users to interface with are going to be created using the in a report. And this is where there's overlap because we can create reports in both the desktop version and the web service. You're going to find the exact same reporting tools in both of those platforms. All right. It's up to you which one you want to use for that. And then lastly, we have dashboards. Dashboards are free-flowing spaces similar to a whiteboard where we are going to pin visualizations from individual reports. So you might have multiple reports, 5 different reports, and let's say you need to pull 1 or 2 visualizations from each of them and put them all together in a related dashboard so that people can see that information. You could absolutely do that. Dashboards are created exclusively in the web service. I'm not going to create a dashboard here, but I will show you an example of one in a little bit. So typically our Power BI data flow, which I'm about to demonstrate for you now, is we would start by connecting to data. We would then transform and combine that data if necessary. We're going to do both of those things in Power BI Desktop. And then we are able to explore and analyze our data, right? We can create our reports and things either in Power BI Desktop or can publish our data model to the web service, create our reports there. Ultimately, we at some point will need to publish our data model and the report to the web service so that we can create dashboards or even so that we can just share the report with other people to make it available to them. That's all going to be done through the web service. All right. All right, so let's take a look at what this process would look like starting from the beginning. So here is Power BI Desktop, and I'm going to go into a blank report. And I'm going to start creating a data model. I'm going to import some data from Excel, and let's do that. So if I go up here in Power BI Desktop, and this is downloadable from the web service, or your organization might make it available in some other kind of way through Office 365 or a a proprietary download area inside your organization. But this is installed on my computer. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Get Data. Now, if I just go to the More area here, you are going to see all of the different places where I can pull data in from. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but just to scroll, just so you can see the volume of data source options, right? You can pretty much import data in from wherever it is you want to pull it in from. All right, you're going to have a hard time not getting your data into Power BI. It's made to work with all of your data. We're going to go ahead and connect to some Excel data here. So I'm going to go ahead to Excel Workbook. I'm going to click Connect. Let's go ahead and find some data here. And I am going to connect to this workbook here like so. And let's see what it does for us. It's going to load this information up into the Power BI Desktop Navigator, which is going to allow me to view my data and either import it as is or step into Power Query to clean and transform my data. So here we see the Navigator loading right now. I can click on either of these two worksheets and I can see the data in each worksheet. So we have products, we have some sales information. I'm going to go ahead and choose both of these. And there's a little bit of cleaning up of some of this sales data I'd like to do. So I'm going to go ahead and down at the bottom, load would just load it into the data model as is. Transform data would take me into Power Query. So I'm going to hit transform data and it is going to launch Power Query for me, which it's doing right now. And I can view my data. All right, so here we go. This is going to load up for us. I can see my sales data. I can see my products data. Now, once I'm in Power Query, I could also start pulling in data from other sources, which I'm going to do in a moment. But first of all, I'm just going to clean this data up a little bit. This ID column, I want to get rid of that. So I'm going to say remove columns and get rid of that ID column. I already know that there is some erroneous customer ID data in here, so I'm going to filter that out. I'm going to just search for a specific customer here, and I'm going to exclude that customer from my results, right? And so I see that this information is now filtered at the data source. Well, once it finishes doing its thing, it'll tell me it's filtered. Come on, it's thinking about it. It's going to put a little funnel there in the drop down arrow for customer ID to let me know that that information is filtered. All right. There we go. All right, I don't know why that took so long. So there it is, lets me know that's filtered. I would like to do a quick calculation to know the difference between order date and ship date. So I am going to do that. I'm going to go to add column. I'm going to do custom column. And it's going to pull up my calculation window here. I'm going to call this column days to ship. And let's do the ship date minus the order date. Click OK. It generates that for me. And I'm going to change this to a whole number. There we are, right? So you can see that we're easily able to clean up our data however it is that we need to do so. Obviously, some very simple, subtle changes here. There's lots of more additional things that we could do that we just don't have the time frame to be able to show here during this time. But if you look around up here, there's all kinds of stuff under transform and home that we can do to manipulate our data. What I would like to do from here is pull in some data from another source. So I'm going to go to new source. I'm going to do text/CSV. And I have a CSV file here. We'll connect to that. All right, and now let's go ahead and just click OK to import this. And there we go. Let's just change the name of it to just customers. I'll use my properties here. Let's just get all this My Footprint Sports stuff out of here and just change that to customers. All right, very good. So I have all this in place now. I'm going to go ahead and close and apply this to import all this data with the changes that we've made in Power Query. We'll make a couple of additional changes here in our data model, and then I will build out a couple of quick visualizations. And then I'm going to go and show you a finished product, right? I already have some of this data imported into the web server, so I'm not going to republish it, but I'll show you a finished product of this in the web service so you can see what it would look like in the context of a more complete report and in the context of a dashboard. All right, it's creating connections, moving a little slowly here for some reason. But it's ultimately going to go ahead and load all of this up into my model for me. All right, one of the things that it's going to do, I'll talk while this is taking its time loading here. One of the things that it is going to do as it imports the data here is it is going to check to see if it has a way to relate the different tables together, the information in the tables together, I should say. And if it can, it's going to go ahead and create relationships automatically. So that's not something that I manually have to do. If you're used to working in a database, right, like Access or SQL, right, you could see it saying right now on screen, detecting relationships, right? It's going to do that automatically so that we don't manually have to do that as we would do in other database programs and such. All right. And once we get the data into the data model, there are some things that we can do to still transform that data a little bit in terms of formatting. All right, so here we are. We have our customers table here. You can see the fields. We have products. We have sales orders. And I have some other views I can go to. If I go to my table view, I can see all of the data inside of each of these tables. As I click on them, right, that data is going to load up. And if I wanted to, I could start manipulating this data, right? So for example, if I were to open up sales orders, where I can see all these dates, if I click on one of these date fields, I get a tools area where I can start adjusting the formatting of my field, right? Change it to a short date if that's what I want, or a different type of format, right? So we're able to do all that kind of stuff through here if that's what we wanted to do. And then I have my model view, and my model view is going to show me all of my tables and how they are related. So we saw it automatically creating those relationships for us. All right, so my data model is here. In the interest of time, let's just go ahead and just build some quick visualizations here. Let's get a stacked bar chart working for us. I'm just going to click on that. And in this stacked bar chart, let's say I would like to look at some subcategory information. So let's look at the average profit per subcategory. All right, and that's going to display for us here. Now you'll see when I drop profit in, and it'll pop up in a moment. When I drop profit in, it is by default going to display as a sum. If I wanted to, I can click, there we go. I could click this drop down arrow and switch that to average. Now it's showing an average. Let's say I wanted to look at that information per region. I'm going to drop region into the legend here. And now I can see that information per region, right? So that's cool. I can hover over my different data points and be able to see the tooltip of information there showing me what's what. Let's drop in another quick visualization. Let's just drop in a table. We'll put our table over here. And let's say in our table, we want to see some product information. I want to see the category. I want to see the subcategory. And I want to see the sales all in one spot, right? And it's going to go ahead and show me that information. All right, so that is cool. If I want to further, let's add something else. Let's say I wanted to also break that down regionally. Throw the regions in there, and that's working for me. Okay. And change the order of fields. Right, and I could continue on until I have all of the visualizations that I want to have in my report. And ultimately what I would do is publish this to the web service. Now let me show you in my web service here a few more completed reports, and then also show you an example or two of a dashboard. So here in my workspace here, I'll show you a completed report based on the same data that I just built a data model off of. If we look at this report here, I'm going to see, and this was built in Power BI Desktop. It has multiple pages. Well, we can click on the different pages. Let's just go from the top to the bottom. And we'll see a variety of visualizations on each page. And I can, of course, click to interact with the data. I have some different slicers that were created here that I can use for interactivity. All right, so we can begin to manipulate this data. Here's an example of another report. Look at this revenue data report. This is a little bit more of a more complex report here. It's one page, but there's a lot going on in this one page, right? I can filter for different manufacturers. I can also choose to bookmark for a specific country's revenue here, right? So all different kind of things we can do. This is also created in Power BI Desktop and then published to the web. And here's an example of a dashboard. And this is a dashboard. It has individual visualizations from multiple reports all together in one space. If I click on any of those visualizations, it'll open up the report that it came from, right? So this is a little scorecard here that came from, or the gauge rather, that came from this report that I showed you. I have it displayed here as a part of this overall dashboard. Okay, here, this is coming from a different report, right? So this is coming from a completely different report here. I've got all that stuff together inside of a dashboard. So again, the way that this works is we start by connecting to data and transforming that data. We can then begin to explore and analyze our data. And at some point, we would publish our information to the web service. And that is where we can begin to create dashboards and share this data out with other individuals. All right, guys, we are coming towards the end of the time for our webinar. So at this time, Mariella, I will turn it back over to you, and let's see if we have any questions to answer.
Absolutely, Ed. We have a couple, so I'm going to bring up the chat and the Q&A. We had a question here, how to access Power BI without a work email address?
I'll say that one more time, please.
How can we access Power BI without a work email address?
That I'm not sure you can do. What you can do is try going to powerbi.com. To my understanding, I don't think that Power BI is a part of the personal Microsoft Office package. I believe you do have to have a business package for that. Now, if you're talking about accessing Power BI in regards to just viewing something someone else created, as long as you have a Microsoft email or Microsoft account, you should be able to do that. And matter of fact, you might not even need a Microsoft account for that. But as far as creating stuff in Power BI, to my understanding, you do have to have a business email for that.
Awesome. Great info to have. Alrighty, we had another question here from Marty. Please confirm that Power BI doesn't modify the source data at all. Good question.
That is correct. Power BI does not modify the source data. It is going to either import the data into the data model or it's going to connect directly to the source data and pull in, but you're not actually changing the data at all. So it's not going to manipulate the source data.
Excellent. Another question here. When you are importing data into Power BI, I noticed JSON was one of the selections. Does JSON also work with Postman?
That I'm not sure. I don't have knowledge of that, so I'm not sure. I'm going to assume yes, but that I do not know, unfortunately.
Awesome. We have another one here. What is the easiest way to import an API into Power BI?
Also going through that same process that we just did. Now, if it's a custom API, I'm not sure exactly which connector you would choose for that, but you're going to take a look at when you go to get data, go to more, just look at the different options that are there, and I'm sure that one of them will facilitate that API.
Excellent. How do I export data from Power BI to Excel?
From Power BI to Excel, once you get it into the web service, let's take a quick look here. I believe that in the web service, you do have options here for that. I'm not quite sure why you would want to go from Power BI to Excel. Usually you're going the other way around. But let's take a look at a report real quick here. And I do believe we do under export. Yeah, so in from the web service, you would go to export. You see analyze in Excel. You can also export to PowerPoint or to a PDF format.
Fantastic info. Alrighty, we had another question here. Is Power BI similar to Tableau?
Power BI is similar to Tableau. That's another business intelligence solution. Does the same stuff just as by a different company.
Excellent. We
And
have
it kind of does the same stuff but in different ways too, I should say. I'm
uh,
more preferential to Power BI.
nice. Awesome. We have another question here. Lots of great questions, everyone. Thank you so much for throwing these in the chat and the Q&A. When you import data, is there an easy way to make sure that all the data was transmitted to Power BI? Example, comparing tools, etc.
There all the data should come in. There's no reason why it wouldn't, unless you chose to filter it out in transform data. So if you're just hitting load, every single thing that is a part of the data set is coming into Power BI. The only way that certain things would be excluded is if you choose to go into Power Query and start excluding some things.
Very good to note for sure. Alrighty, and then I am going to we're probably going to get through about one or two more questions just to be super mindful of everyone's time. When you connect to something like SharePoint, how does it refresh to keep the data up to date?
When you are dealing with Excel, you have to refresh manually. There's a refresh button that you can click in Power BI desktop or on the web service. If you are dealing with like a database or something like that, you can choose to switch to doing a direct query where it will automatically refresh every time you load your report.
Good to know, good to know. Just in case we have up-to-date info. And I'm going ahead, we're going to do one more question here. With the more complex reports that you showed, did you have to add direct pictures of those company logos while building the report for it to be represented in that manner? More of like a
Yeah.
graphical question.
Yes, you did. Yeah, you had to have those images.
Awesome. Alrighty. Well, we are a little over time, so I'm going to cut it here. But thank you again for all your fantastic questions. And thank you so much, Ed, for your time today. This was a lot of really fantastic info for our data analytics beginners. So if any of you need any info on this topic or needed a little bit more info on the course itself, please do not be afraid to visit us at newhorizons.com. And if you missed out on any part of this session, we will be sharing this recording with all of you in an email after the webinar. Thanks again, Ed.
My pleasure.
Awesome. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.